Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and I just got finished watching the new PlayStation 5 reveal conference, which is the closest thing we have to E3 this year. In previous years, at least the past 3 years, I went to E3 in Los Angeles, attended various conferences, and afterwards I would give you guys kind of my quick thoughts of every little reveal. Obviously, because there is no E3 this year, we can't do that. So this is the closest thing we can do. So what I did is I watched the conference and I took this ridiculously oversized piece of paper and I just quickly noted down things, and we're just going to kind of go over a general sense of what that conference was. Now, to begin, the presentation style is usually something I'm kind of critical of, especially because I get to, in the past, have been able to be in the room and see these things. This one, you have to make kind of an exception because of the whole situation that's going around on the entire planet at the moment. So you can't have people come up on a stage and do a whole song and dance and then reveal stuff. You can't do any of that. So that being a huge factor, you have to give them just kind of a pass on that. It was just, basically, it was just, here's some footage that we cut together, and here's a guy in a room who's talking about something, and here's some gameplay. And honestly, the pacing of it was pretty good. I give Sony props for that. The presentation was not boring. It was a lot of things, but boring was definitely not one of them, in my estimation. And overall, the gameplay that they showed, it looked impressive overall, visually. They mentioned that everything was recorded on actual PlayStation 5 hardware, or at least PlayStation 5 development kits. It looked solid. It was a smooth experience, and that was very cool. So the whole thing opened by doing this weird nostalgia bait intro, which I assume their motive was not to like trick you into anything. It was just kind of like, hey, we've revealed consoles in the past, back in 1994 and also in 2000, and like they just kind of did that little history lesson. But they really never came back around to that, because with basically one exception, there was really nothing in this entire thing that was like, hey, remember this classic PlayStation franchise? Yeah, we brought it back. There was really nothing like that, nor was there any mention of backwards compatibility or any of that type of stuff. So it felt a tad misleading. I doubt it was intentionally misleading. I think it was just kind of to start you off with like, hey, remember PlayStation as a brand? But they never really went anywhere with that. Whatever. After that, the first game-based thing they talked about was GTA 5 Enhanced. Now, when this first started playing, I was like, oh, dude, they're dropping the GTA 6 bomb. That's a great opening. But it wasn't. It was GTA 5 Enhanced, which is... Okay, I recognize that GTA 5 is easily, like, the most successful game ever produced. Like, it is insanely popular to this day, despite having come out in, what, 2012, 2011? It's a ridiculous game as far as success, but it's also ridiculously old. Like, why are we still pushing GTA 5? It will then have been on 3 generations in a row of PlayStation hardware. PS3, it launched on PS3, guys. I don't have any problem with the game existing. It's just more like, okay, cool. The first thing out of the gate is GTA 5 again. I'm getting like Dead or Alive flashbacks here. That's all. Whatever. And I guess they're gonna do some versions of GTA will be free digitally through PlayStation Plus on PS4 and PS5 at some point. Whatever. Okay, cool. The first new game they showed, at least it was brand new to me, was Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I'm pretty sure is a direct sequel to the Spider-Man game that was on PS4 a couple years ago. That looked pretty cool. That one was one of the ones I was like, oh, all right, totally, I would be on board with that, and I'm calling it now. I think that's a launch title. All they said was Holiday 2020, which is also the presumed release date of the PlayStation 5, which, spoilers, I guess, they did not actually give a release date. I'm still of the mindset that that will come out on either November 13th, 2020 or November 20th, 2020. We will see. One of those 2 dates, and I think Xbox will take the other one. We will see. But neither has been announced. So, yeah, I'm assuming that'll be a launch title. They then went on to talk about Gran Turismo 7, which looked... to be fair, that is an old PlayStation franchise that they did bring back, much like the intro kind of suggested, so full credit to them there. The game looked beautiful, as I would expect. Things like, you know, also like Forza Horizon would look beautiful. Those types of realistic racing games are not my cup of tea, but if you like those type of games, rest assured you're going to get one, and I think it's also a launch title. They went on to talk about Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. That game looked really cool. I mean, it's just yet another Ratchet & Clank game. Awesome. Glad to see that franchise make, you know, a brand new game like that. Not exactly a lost franchise, though. I mean, like, it had its own movie. Like, it was only a couple of years ago. So Ratchet & Clank is a relatively active franchise. I guess what I'm saying is there wasn't much of a, like, whoa, you brought that franchise back from the dead type of thing that ever happened. You just had some kind of older franchises that routinely get new games to get a new game. And that was one of them. They then talked about this game called Project Athea, which, from my recollection, I didn't write anything down. There was a lot of new IPs, and I want to make this very clear. Full props to Sony on this one, because one of the big complaints you get from people is like, all they do is bring back old stuff, or they don't bring enough new IPs. Like, you can never really win with gamers, to be honest. It's like, you get, both are wrong. You know, it's either all it is new stuff, where's my nostalgia? Or it's all it is nostalgia, where's my new stuff? They did their best to kind of balance it out. I feel like they didn't quite hit that perfectly, but I will say that they did, with the whole new IPs thing, they kind of crushed it. There's a whole lot of new stuff there, and I think that this is one of them, Project Athea. But I don't really remember what the game actually was. Then they talked about this game called Stray, which basically featured like a futuristic type of world with a cat, and you play as a stray cat. They didn't give much sense of what that game actually was, but I remember it looking kind of neat. They talked a little bit about PlayStation 5 hardware at this point, just a little. And it's all stuff we knew, but just to recap real quick, they talked a lot about the controller and the updates they're making to it. They mentioned, of course, that the thing is going to use SSDs, though it didn't claim what size. I'm guessing a 1 terabyte and a 2 terabyte, but we don't really know. And it also mentioned that it has a 4K Blu-ray drive, which will be kind of confusing, as you will see later, but at least one of the models will have a 4K Blu-ray drive in it. They went on to talk about a game called Returnal. I don't remember what this was, but I do remember, again, it was something that looked kind of neat. Sackboy: A Big Adventure, which is part of the Little Big Planet universe. Cool to see that game make another return, because we haven't seen, as far as I recall, we haven't seen a Little Big Planet game since the very end of the PS3, very beginning of PS4, which was 7 years ago. So it's cool to see that. And it's also made by Sumo Digital, and those guys make some really good games. So that was actually one of the ones where I was like, oh, cool, that actually might be like a really fun game. They then went on to talk about something called Destruction All-Stars, which looked like the next generation of Rocket League. It has nothing to do with Rocket League, but that looked like someone said, hey, take Rocket League and make it bigger. And that's just the vibe I got from that. The next one I think is one that a lot of people will probably like. It's called Kena Bridge of Spirits. To me, the second I'm looking at this, I'm going, this is an attempt at a Zelda Breath of the Wild clone. That's what it looked like. Everything about it just looked like, we need a Zelda Breath of the Wild, so let's just make a Zelda Breath of the Wild without license to that character or that franchise. We'll just make our own. That's what I'm not saying that is a bad thing. The game could be amazing. I'm just saying what my initial instinct was. Like, oh, cool. Zelda Breath of the Wild, essentially, for the PlayStation 5. Okay. Goodbye, Volcano. I can't even read my own. Volcano High. Yeah, Goodbye, Volcano High. All I wrote down for this was anime dinosaurs. I don't know what this was. I know in my Discord a bunch of people were like, we're all making fun of it at the same time, because you're just seeing these weird like emo dinosaur anime characters talking about high school. We're like, what is this? So I don't know. I don't know what this was. If that's the gameplay, it just looked like anime footage, like from straight from a movie. It did not look like a game. That doesn't mean there isn't one. This is obviously just a teaser, but I don't know what this was. So then they talked about Oddworld Soulstorm, and this one was cool because you're getting a new Oddworld game, which is a franchise that goes all the way back to the PS1, and it's hopped around on different platforms. It's not like an exclusively PlayStation franchise like, say, Gran Turismo 7 is. But it is cool to see it make a comeback, because we have had a few of those come out over time, but they were usually like smaller, like budget indie titles. This one looks like they're finally getting like a AAA budget again for an Oddworld game, so that'll be cool to see. They showed more of Ghostwire Tokyo, which I think was revealed last year, and it looked cool then. It looks much cooler now, and I think that's a launch title as well. That's probably one of the ones I'll definitely want to get. Then they did a whole bunch of just, here's some rapid fire of some various games. Jet the Far Shore. I don't really remember what that was. Godfall had kind of this. I'm sure the gameplay doesn't play like this, but it had this Smite type of look to it, but like next gen Smite. You know, it didn't look. Although I'm sure it's not actually that type of gameplay. It just had this very medieval, you know, battle system looking type of game. I don't know. I don't really remember exactly what that was. Solar Ash. Nope, got nothing. I don't remember that at all. Hitman 3. Hitman 3, I kind of figured out immediately what that was going to be. And they were talking about how that Hitman game is the end of that new Hitman trilogy. That game looked pretty good. If you like Hitman, I'm sure this will be right up your alley, but it looked pretty good. And also, one of the few, like I said, older franchises to make any sort of comeback up here, even though that one would have been very expected. I don't think anybody was surprised there was a new Hitman game. Astro's Playroom, I was a little surprised to see this because all I really know about the Astro character is that Astro's Playroom was like a little app you had on PS4 in the early days to interact with the camera. I don't remember it being a particularly significant thing. So the fact that they like gave it a whole new game for PS5 is a little odd to me, but they did it. Little Devil Inside. Okay, so this one came off like a little, like weird movie type of thing, and it looked really cool. And it's hard to describe the gameplay because they were all over the place with what it even really was. But it was cool looking, and I look forward to finding out more about it. Then they did NBA. They actually had Zion Williams talk about NBA 2K1. For those who don't know, he's most likely going to be Rookie of the Year, and he should have been a Chicago Bull, but we got screwed in the draft. Anyway, so yes, whatever, NBA 2K1. There may not even be a 2K1's like actual season in real life, so that might be the closest thing you get to the NBA next year. But whatever, that's going to be a thing. I don't think anybody's really surprised by that. That game, interestingly, is coming out in the fall, as always sports games do. But obviously, the PS5 version of it wouldn't be available this fall. It would come out when the actual console does, which makes sense. Then there was one called Bug Snacks. This one I just looked at it and I went, Octodad on drugs. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is made by the people who made Octodad. Okay, perfect. And the whole thing felt like a drug addict's idea of a video game. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It might actually be great. In fact, a lot of elements of it did look fun. It looked like it was just trying to be this weird... at first, it kind of looked like it was trying to do this weird, like, Animal Crossing, like, silly type of thing. And then it kind of gets to this, like, darker, more evil thing that started giving me, like, this is an older reference, but started giving me, like, Roz's Hell vibes. And we'll see what that game ultimately amounts to. But that looked like an interesting one that presented itself as not that interesting at first until it was like, oh, by the way, boom! So that was cool. Then they did a Demon Souls remake that was actually announced by Shuhei Yoshida himself. Now, interestingly, I didn't know... At first, I thought, is this Elder Scrolls 6? Because it had like this giant... It just looked like a new Elder Scrolls game. Kind of like to expand upon that very small thing Bethesda showed us a while back. It was like, oh, cool. Maybe this is what that is. This is where they put that space. No, it's a Demon Souls remake. When I first saw that it was Demon Souls, I was like, the PS3 game? Is this a sequel? Is this a remake? What is this? Or does it have nothing to do with that? They just use the name Demon Souls because it's a dead franchise. According to my Discord, people are like, no, that's actually a remake. I'm like, cool. So there you go. Demon Souls was kind of an early Dark Souls. So think of it that way. Then they showed this game called Deathloop that looked pretty neat. This weird paradise-like environment for everyone living on it, except for this one guy, because he's constantly caught in a death loop. People just hunt him for entertainment. He dies and he comes back like, I guess, Bill Murray style in Groundhog Day, and he's trying to break the cycle of that and escape. Interesting premise. The next one was fascinating because as I'm watching this, I'm getting very neutral vibes from most of these games. Like, that looks cool, that looks cool, that looks kind of dumb, I don't care, you know, indifference, whatever it is. This one, I'm sitting there going, this game looks awesome. What is this game? This looks really, really neat. And then out of nowhere, they're like, it's Resident Evil 8. And I was like, oh! What are the odds? At least it says something about the consistency of my taste, because I like Resident Evil games. So I'm sitting there going, this just looks awesome. And then you find out that's Resident Evil 8. You're like, even better! So they merged the two concepts. But the only thing that made me laugh out loud to myself, I made myself laugh with this, is when they at first called it The Village, and then they like highlighted that the V, you know, ILL is meant to stand for, you know, Roman numerals of 8, and then it's like Resident Evil 8, The Village. And then all I thought is, do you really want to go anywhere near, take a horror story and put it anywhere near the term The Village? Did you not see the M. Night Shyamalan disaster? Maybe don't do that. But whatever, they did it. That made me laugh just thinking about that line of logic. But yeah, Resident Evil 8 looked really cool. Then they had this game come up called Pragmata, or Pragmata. I'm short for, I'm sure, pragmatism or pragmatic. But anyway, it from all I could tell, you're like playing as like this astronaut guy who has to like save a girl, and then you go up into space. It's like the game doesn't come out until like 2022, so this is an extremely early sample of what the game is. So it's really hard to say if it's going to be any good or not. But it looked interesting to say the least. Then they showed a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. This is Horizon Forbidden West. So Horizon Zero Dawn was like Sony's kind of attempt at having a Zelda game before this, and people really liked it. It was a very popular, very successful game, so it's not surprising they continued that. And I'm very happy for them that they have a new franchise like that they can just kind of keep pushing out. That's cool. So it's good to see another one of those. Then they did what a lot of us were waiting for, and then they let us down in a lot of ways. So here's where they didn't do us any favors. They did not give us a release date, they did not give us prices, and they did not mention anything about backwards compatibility. Not a single hint of it. Nothing. And like I said, don't read too much into that intro, because I think that they were just like, oh, that's interesting, as opposed to like, here's any sort of hidden message. Companies are not really that subtle. But all they did really show us was the console itself. They showed us the PS5, and my instant reaction was, it looks like a router. It's like, and then all of a sudden people in my Discord was like, it looks like a cable modem. It looks like this. Like, we were all kind of in agreement. It just looks a little weird. I'm not saying it's bad. It looks like a router. That's just, but you know, at the same time, kind of funny actually when you think about it. I mean, Sony's essentially offering us a router visually, while Microsoft is offering us a subwoofer. I guess that's just going to be a thing with the next generation, the 9th gen consoles, is they're just going to look really bizarre. Okay. And so you got that, and then they revealed there's 2 versions, which is not really a shock to people that there was going to be 2 versions, but it looks like the method by which that's happening is a little surprising. We've been consistently under the impression that the PS5 was going to use physical media, because every piece of evidence about that, including the understanding of Japanese culture and the kind of the opposition to doing things purely digitally within the home, has led us to think, yeah, okay, they're going to have a physical edition. And sure enough, they are. But what's surprising is there's also going to be an all-digital version of the console. Now, the assumption I'm going to make here, this is purely speculation, is that the physical edition, the one that actually has a disc drive, is the one that, of course, can play 4K Blu-rays and all that stuff. That version of the console, I will bet you, in US terms, is going to cost $599 USD, whereas the digital one might cost $499 USD. Again, those numbers are unconfirmed. That is what I am guessing that the price point will be based on some of the leaks we've seen and so on and so forth. But we don't know, because they didn't announce it. But what they also announced is that I guess it'll include a remote control, a media remote. Cool. But yeah, they're a digital and a physical edition to kind of, I guess Sony's trying to play it both ways and see like, look, the truth is, we don't know how much longer physical media will last, but at the same time, not everybody really cares. Maybe a lot of people would like to save $100 on the unit and just download their games. I don't know. But I personally would never be in that camp, but that's me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, because we don't know the price point, I think, honestly, I'm just going to call it right now. I think that those prices, part of the reason I speculate on those prices actually being accurate, in addition to a couple things, like there's been some Amazon listings in the UK that said it would be £599, which is about $720 US. Traditionally, they keep the numbers but adjust the currency. So in the US, the console's always cheaper. It just typically is. Despite how much we complain about it, it's always more expensive in other countries. Just letting you know, my fellow Americans, that's usually how it works. That being partial evidence, I also feel like the reason they didn't announce the price point is because they're not happy with it. The thing is, if you've been following a lot of PlayStation like news and a lot of like insider scoops, if you will, the truth is that Sony needs the console to make money on its own. That's not usually... Historically, what Sony would do is give away the razors to sell the blades model. With the PS1, the PS2, and the PS3, that's how they approached it. What that basically means is the console costs X amount of dollars to produce. We will sell it for less than that. That way people are like, oh, I'm getting a really good deal. And then we'll just, once the console's in the home, we'll make tons of money off the game sales. So it'll all balance out. Where that all collapsed historically was the PlayStation 3. It cost about $900 to build a launch model PS3, and they were selling them for $600, which would work if people were buying the consoles and buying the games. But when people don't buy the consoles and don't buy the games, they hemorrhage money. So that's why they had to salvage the PlayStation 3. With the PS4, they were not going to do that. They decided, okay, it costs about $380 to make one. We'll sell them for $400. We'll make a little bit of coin on it. We won't lose anything, and then people will buy the game. So they did well by that. I assume they want to continue with that same model that they went with the PS4. It makes sense. It worked very well. PS4 was a giant hit of a console. It makes sense. But from a financial perspective, all the hardware they're putting into the PS5 doesn't make it cheap to produce. And psychologically speaking, I don't know if people are really prepared for the idea to drop $500,000 on a video game console, if that's really changed in any real way. Unlike Microsoft, who probably would run into the exact same problem where they're like, it's going to cost this much per unit. The one difference between the two is that Microsoft can afford to lose money, especially to spite Sony and try to cut away at their market share, where Sony kind of needs this. I mean, the entire Sony brand really revolves around the entirety of the PlayStation, whereas Microsoft doesn't really need or care. I mean, it's not fair to say they don't care, but they don't need the Xbox brand to be successful. So what I'm saying is, I think the reason they didn't announce a price point is because they pretty much know it's not going to be a winner to say that out loud at this point. It's going to have to come out at some point, but they also don't want to give Microsoft time to respond. Very famously, Sony was the ones who, after Sega came up with the, what was it, Saturn, $399 price point back at E3, like 94. You know, and Sony just went up there and went $299. They just had $100 less. So what I was guessing that if Sony came out there and was just like, yes, we're going to have one edition, which in this case would be the physical edition at $599. We're going to have the digital edition at $499. Microsoft could easily just be like $399. Boom, drop the mic, and then it's over. And they obviously want to avoid that. So at some point, one of them is going to blink first. This is a game of chicken between two companies. We'll see. But yeah, overall, pretty solid showing. A lot of cool stuff I'm interested in. A lot of stuff I didn't really care about, obviously. But, you know, overall, this doesn't... I have to keep it real. This does not make me go, oh, I need a PS5. I can't wait. Maybe it's just the age I'm at. I'm 33, but it's... I don't know. There was no one particular game in there that I'm like, I absolutely need the console day one. I need to play this game immediately. There's just like some stuff that would be cool to go along with it. I don't know. There's nothing really pushing me to be super excited. And the same goes true of the Xbox One X. This is not like a PlayStation 5 specific problem. It's just, this generation does not feel like there's any great inspiring reason for it to start. It just feels like the consoles are 7 years old and we just kind of need to update the tech. It's just transitional. And that's fine. That's going to happen. It's just not a very inspiring message. And it's funny, I've seen a lot of messages from people being like, it's too early, they shouldn't do new consoles yet. It's like, dude, historically speaking, they're already 2 years late. Console cycles are about 5 years on average. It's just that we have an entire generation of kids who got screwed up by the 7th generation because we had an economic collapse right in the middle of that, so they had to force the console to last much longer than they were meant to. So the kid who grew up on the Xbox 360, it has it in his mind that a console is supposed to last 10 years. It's not. It's supposed to be like 5 years. So in this case, they're kind of splitting the difference. They're like, look, you got 10 years or so out of the PS3. That was ridiculous. But what we're going to give you is, 7 out of the PS4. Not to say the PS4 won't continue to get games beyond the PS5, but 2021 is pretty much where you'll see the PS4 stop. Like they're gonna still have games, but it's gonna be less and less and less. You're gonna get down to like sports games and Just Dance and that type of thing. And it'll probably, in 2022, you'll get a few more, but again, it'll get even lower as far as like who really cares. That's just the normal way console cycles work. So, hey, you got an extra 2 full years out of it. That's not really normal. But that said, despite the historical precedent with all that, I don't feel this generation, like I said, is all that inspired. It's just kind of happening because it needs to happen. I don't know. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the whole thing. I hope this was informative. I hope you guys liked it. If you guys could please like, comment, subscribe, I'd appreciate that. Check out all the social media stuff in the description. Come join the Discord. Talk all about it if you want to. Appreciate that as well. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later.